You are about to watch my interview with the great Jonathan Maron, taken from Bass Space 2023, which coincidentally is happening right now. Started yesterday. It's happening today. As you're seeing this, it'll be happening all day tomorrow as well. Now, what is Bass Space 2023? It is only the biggest and best bass event online ever. Put on by SBL, hosted by me, and of course, Mr. Scott Devine. And it's happening right now. Seminars, builders forums. We're talking about gear. There's lessons, interviews. It's all happening over at bass-space.com. You need to register. That's where you go. I'm going to say it again. Bass-space.com. Registration is absolutely free. So after you're done watching this video, go register and we'll see you there. But until then, check out this interview with the great Jonathan Maron. I am sitting here with your favorite bass player's favorite bass player, the amazing Jonathan Maron. Not only is he an incredible and influential bassist, he's also a band leader, solo artist, composer, passionate educator, and heavy sideman. He's played with countless cool bands and artists such as the Groove Collective, Maxwell, Michelle Ndegeo, cello, Tupac Shakur. I can't wait to ask you about that. Jewel, India Ari, Donnie McCaslin, and Anushka Shankar, just to name a handful. And that is a killing list, dude. It's crazy. I'm proud to call him an influence and a dear friend, Mr. Jonathan Maron. Welcome to Bass Space 2023.
What's going on? Hey, we're doing it. We're here.
We're doing it. We're
Nice.
We're making it happen. Thank you very much for being here, man. I want to ask you this. When did you realize that the bass was the coolest instrument in the world? When did that happen for you?
You know, I used to play saxophone, and it was kind of the classic story where it's like middle school and there's going to be a jazz band and there's a bass sitting in the corner, and the band director said, "Does anybody want to learn how to play bass?" And a saxophone is just not, it's like there's this Music Man amp in the corner with a curly cable and a Fender Precision bass.
Yes.
And it wasn't even close. And I love the saxophone. All due respect to all my good friends who are saxophone players, but that was just, and also I was 4'3" in 7th grade, unfortunately. That's what I was working with. And I was gravitating towards lower and lower notes. So I started on alto and then tenor and then hilariously baritone. So
incredible.
Yeah. So me and gravity were at odds with a few of those things. Yeah.
Do you still play sax at all?
No, not at all.
So you made the complete switch. Did anyone else in that environment want to do that? Or were you like the only person that thought it was cool?
I don't remember. You know, what I do remember is that all the people who had been snare drummers all wanted to play the drum set, but I don't think anybody else wanted to play bass.
See, you just had that foresight. Like, I mean, man, I just thought it was the consolation prize. For me, it was like, because that guy was already doing drums in the band and this guy was doing guitar. And I was like, fine, I'll play this stupid bass. And then it wasn't until later that I realized, oh, this is amazing. But
wait, were you a guitar player first?
No. I was nothing, right? But someone else was already doing the things that I wanted to do. Like I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to play drums. And then it was like, oh, sucks, the bass. Okay, fine. But I wanted to hang out with those people. You know, it was a band of my friends. But were you like aesthetically drawn to it first? Was it like you're talking about the curly cord and the P bass and the Music Man amp? I mean, I can see that in my mind. Was it like, did it scream cool to you?
It did. It really did. And musically, it had a lot of appeal for me too. Yeah. Like I think I was just able to distinguish what the bass was actually doing on records. Like that was relatively new awareness for me.
Yeah.
And I also remember there was this one concert in particular where I was supposed to be reading the chart, and I wasn't able to. And I just started making up my own bass lines.
Yes.
And I got a big reaction. Like there was this little bass break in the middle of a song. Yeah. And I was supposed to be playing all these 16th notes and I couldn't read them and ledger lines and things like that.
Right.
So I just dropped what I thought would work and people reacted right away. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is me. I'm here.
Wow.
Yeah. So the 7th grade bangs. You know what I'm saying? Like Hondo 2 bass.
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah.
So cool. You had said something when we did an Instagram live together when your most recent EP came out. And you had said something about like I was asking you about transcription, maybe about reading, and you had said like, man, because you told me that you never really got into like fully transcribing, you know, all the Parker heads or all the
Hmm.
Jamerson bass lines. And you said this thing that I've never forgotten. You said, man, do you ever like squint your eyes and like
Oh.
blur out something so that you're not seeing the detail, but you're seeing sort of the overall shape? And I was
Hmm.
like, and it was like asking me if I'd ever been to Mars. No, I'd never done that. But that reminds me, you have this approach, I feel like, where you're seeing the bigger picture. Like, you know, when you're talking about playing the thing that you wanted to play in that moment in seventh grade, is that a part of like, okay, there are these ledger lines, you weren't reading it, but it's also, was it a bit of a choice of like you had this creativity inside of you where you kind of had something that you wanted to say on the instrument, and so you said it instead of putting in the time to read that thing or transcribe that thing?
I mean, I guess ultimately it was a creative impulse, but in that moment it was survival. It was like I'm being chased by a tiger. I better
Yeah,
learn how
yeah,
to climb a tree.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's funny that you talk about transcription because I remember thinking that was like a really wise thing to say. But I also want to call myself out and get into some transcription this year. Like, there's so much to learn from
Sure.
getting under the hood and seeing the details. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I mean, like, I do still really benefit from that, from broad strokes, general shapes first. Um, but I also I'm going to call myself out and say that this year is going to be one with more transcriptions.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, something that I've heard you say before too that I've really thought about a lot is instead of, you know, thinking about even though 2023 might be the year of transcription for you, something that you've said that I love is that, you know, even just a piece, even just something, maybe
Mm.
not the whole catalog work of McCartney or maybe
Hmm.
not even the full song, but a piece, a little something, and then turn it, conjugate it, make it your own, use it for
Hmm.
your own creative like thrust. And I think about that a lot because I'm a person that really gets in the weeds, and sometimes um, I'm not thinking about my own creativity enough, or I'm not prioritizing it. So actually, I mean, the squint your eyes, see the bigger picture, don't feel like you have to do the whole thing in order to have creative input or power in
Hmm.
that way, I think is actually, at least to me, has been really
Oh, cool.
inspirational. So it was not meant to ever be a call out in any
Oh, no,
way.
no, no. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to do the stuff I haven't done yet.
Yeah. 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 And
Yeah.
you sent me this list, and I want to talk to you about each one of these things, but we don't have the time. So here's what I'm going to do. You told me that you have these phrases or these prompts that remind you of things to talk about when you're teaching. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read down the list. And
Okay.
then when I'm done reading the list, I want you to pick one or two that stand out to you the most and tell me what the hell they mean and how
Okay.
you use them in
All right.
context. Okay. So Jonathan sent me this list in all caps and, and they are, I mean, I don't even know. I'm so excited to hear what some of these mean. Okay. So here are the phrases that Jonathan likes to see to remind him of really important concepts when he's teaching. Mittens, obstacle remover, stuffed animal with a titanium skeleton. How you do anything is how you do everything. Cook simply using the finest ingredients. A relative gives you a sweater. Tension knob, fast song, ballad, melody, bassline, drums. The stronger your internal connection, the more you can loosen your external grip. Those are the phrases.
This is like Jeopardy. I feel like you just read the topics. Like, I'll take mittens for 600.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Tell me about mittens.
Well, mittens was just, these are just, so there were a couple of workshops that I've taught, including the one that we both did in New York.
Yeah.
There are a couple of workshops where I started preparing and almost scripting what I was going to say, and then I just realized it'd be more fun to just write a bunch of prompts on a piece of paper and let myself be loose. So that's what this was originally, because I started to write like what I was going to, like a script, which is ridiculous because that's no fun for anybody.
Sure.
So Mittens is, rather than learning, if there's a song that you like, and this was also a way of appreciating harmony and melody. If there's a song that you like, rather than learning everything that the bass player does on the song and being locked into that, is just play the roots and play the roots under the melody, almost as though you're, wearing mittens. Like you're just holding the root and trying to accurately sing the melody. And just almost just for enjoyment, just to hear what those pitches, what that creates.
Against the simple root note, against the simple role of the bass being the bass.
Yeah. And it's, there's even if you're never going to be in a situation where you play a Wayne Shorter song, like I'm not going to get called for that kind of musical situation. But if you're in that, those are beautiful compositions.
Right.
If you open up the real book and take a song like Infant Eyes and you just hold the root and learn the melody, you kind of get to enjoy that in a way that you might not have let yourself unless you went to school studying that kind of music or were in those situations.
And someone made you learn that head. Yeah, right.
But that's gorgeous music. Yes. And so there's a lot of music like that where I just want to feel, I want to hear what those things sound like. Yeah. And it's really helped me understand kind of how the bass moves. Like I could transcribe the bass line, and like we were talking about, I probably should, but I want to hear the relationship between root and melody, and I want to accurately sing the melody just so I can hear what it's doing.
I love that Mittens is the prompt. Can I ask you about one that I'm curious about too? Is stuffed animal with a titanium skeleton.
So man, thank you for doing this. I was just like, sorry about the all caps. I really didn't mean to shout at you.
I love it.
So that was this idea of how bass ultimately can be a very warm and round, fuzzy thing.
Yes.
But we also want to have this really unshakable awareness of where we are on the grid, how we're relating to the harmony. So that's a titanium skeleton. It could be a giant stuffed animal, like it's like this big round thing.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we're sleeping on how it connects harmonically and rhythmically.
How it's underpinned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it might be this big slide, but Ian Allison knows that when the one hits, that's going to be boom. That's hitting the target.
Okay. I love that.
Does that make sense to you too?
It's amazing. And and I wondered if it was, I was like stuffed animal. I thought it was something like that. Fun. You articulated it far better than I. Last one on the list. Relative gives you a sweater. What's that?
Oh, so I like that one a lot because, that was sort of, that gives me license to speak as though I know lots of stuff when I'm teaching, but I sort of tell people to receive stuff as though a relative has given you a sweater. Like, we're here together. I just gave you this ugly sweater. Just put it on for now. I know it's put it on for now. Sure. I'm here. We're here together. When I leave, you can cut the sleeves off. You can donate it. Do whatever you want. But we're hanging out here together. I'm going to show you this fingering. Like, just play the fingering I'm giving you. So that's a relative gives you a sweater.
Like, say thank you to your great Aunt Betsy for the sweater.
Yes, totally.
I do want to talk to you about a couple of tracks, and I think you have some ready to go, right?
Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about what you played on Maxwell's Ascension.
All right.
Because it is, to me, briefly, when I was teaching privately in college, I had a student come to me, Pat Johnson. Pat Johnson, I hope you watch this, man.
What's up, Pat?
Pat is the best. And he was like, I need to learn the dopest bass line in history. And I was like, great, like what Rush song is that? And he's like, no, it's this Maxwell tune. And he put it on, and I had heard it, but it had been like in the recesses. And I was like, oh yeah, this is ferocious. And I had no idea until sort of like embarrassingly recently that was you on it. And so I did my best to learn it and pay attention to the phrasing, pay attention to the feel, really transcribe it, and then show it to my student Pat. But we've got, the horse's mouth. I'm so excited. I would love, could you play a little of it, like play a little of the track and maybe play some bass? I feel like, when he comes in and, you're waiting for it, right? Like you've established this groove. It feels so good. You could sit in it forever. But then of course that drum fill leads you into his falsetto, that first note that's higher than even now. It was higher than I remember it being. Like it was, like another couple of steps higher. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Where like, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's like a track is worth 1,000 words, right? Can you talk about that bass line, and can you talk about that session a little bit and just break down what that was like? Did you write that line? How long did you spend playing that line? What bass you used, all that. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So that song, including the bass line, was co-written not by me, but by Ital Shur and Maxwell together. I don't know if I ever talked to you about my friend Ital.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think so.
He was one of the original guys in Groove Collective. And then he went on to write this song and Smooth by Santana.
Oh, crazy.
A song you may or may not, I would say you've heard that several thousand times.
Heard that a few times, yeah.
So he's a pretty heavy songwriter, and he and Maxwell were working together on a lot of songs. And the demo of this song was originally synth bass and octave down, and kind of like a more short percussive sound. So it wasn't this vibe.
Yes.
But the bass line was in place for sure.
Got it.
And I got called, I don't know if it was an afterthought. I don't know if they were thinking the synth bass would be it, or if they'd always been planning to replace it. But they were recording at Electric Lady, which is a magical place. Sure. And I brought 4 basses, which was not necessary. I brought silly basses too. I brought a Guild Starfire, and I brought this Guild Solid Body that I love, and I can't remember what else I brought. But really, it was all this black Yamaha BB that I have. I have the white one behind me. Yeah. But it's this black Yamaha that I used. Both pickups open, which I haven't really done since then. At some point, I started just top. Yeah,
like it has like the track. Like when I really listened again today, thinking about doing this with you, it had a little more top end than I remember. Like I remember feeling, this is a fat P bass sound, but that stands to reason, right? So it's both pickups on full.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Can you pick up that BB that's behind you right now? Can we see it?
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You have one just like it.
Did you sell it? Mine is no. I do have it, but mine is an active one. So It's like the later. Yeah. It's not the super sweet passive. Yeah.
And Scott's has some wacky blade pickups here.
Yes, it does.
That I've never seen before. He's got some. Yeah. All right, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
Watch, now I put it down,
it's
it's going to go
cool.
crashing. What I learned, so yeah, I brought these basses, and I did actually play a lot of different variations of the bass line.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanted them to know how good I was and how many ideas I had. But ultimately,
Sure.
we wound up really focusing on the line. And I'm sure I played it for a really long time until it really settled.
Yeah.
And it was the kind of thing when even we were recording and it was sounding good, we got to a certain place in the song and we were like, okay, that's the feeling. Now let's go put that in the beginning of the song.
Ah, yes.
So it's one bass line, but we actually spent a lot of time. There's this one variation where I go up to an A instead of a G, like these little details, and we
It's
placed them.
great.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So all those little moments were intentional. Yes.
well, some of them just fell in the right place and we were psyched,
Right.
but we'd get to a place in the song and then we'd be like, oh, that needs the like this, and we'd put it in.
Yes.
So it was composed. And I will say that, you know, I was in my 20s. Maxwell was probably in his very early 20s, if not just 20. And he had such a clear vision of how it's supposed to be. And even the vocal is such a masterclass. And I think because I knew him, I was like, yeah, it sounds great at the time. And now I
Right.
hear it and I just can't believe how good it is. And there are a few
Right.
other songs on that record where yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It's
you
like,
had that, but yeah.
oh, it's like in real time with people, especially people you know. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
sort of you don't realize you're in the presence of greatness,
Yeah.
maybe, right?
Yeah, totally. I was
Could you
just like, yeah,
play?
sounds great. And now after I'm
Yeah,
like,
you're like,
yeah,
what happened? Yeah, right.
yeah,
Like, so cool to be a part of. Could you play a little of that bass line, either
yeah.
with or without the track, however you want to do it? Two things stand out to me about that. Like hearing you do it that way, I'm like, oh, there's so much of you in that bass line. Like where you're choosing to punch accents, dun,
Mm,
dun, 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 like where you're choosing to really
mm,
like make the note kind of snarl and stick out. And then you also have this really cool laid back phrasing in the 16th note. Dun,
mm,
dun, dun, doo, doo, doo. That the boo doo
mm,
doo. That moment is so, it's never rushed. It feels so like backside and then snaps kind of in back into time. Like at least to me on the track, when I hear it, it feels so pocketed and relaxed, and it's amazing. The combination of that relaxed 16th note feel with the like the accents is really
oh,
unique.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm not
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Thank you, Ian. I'm making it every time you say something nice, I'm making a note so I can send you a baked good. Like I'm just like, you know, a
Well,
dozen glazed
it's just
donuts.
crazy.
There you go.
Donuts. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Good. I love donuts.
It's awesome. Anytime I get a chance to really focus on a groove,
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many times when someone's like, yeah, it's an eighth note rock thing, and then the chorus is this, and you're just sort of rushing through something.
Yes.
But there's so much magic in how something sits and how the sound is interacting.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we rush through, and that's the magic.
Yeah.
And this song in particular, I mean, it's funny. Well, in this song in particular, I was feeling sort of self-conscious about it because I remember feeling a little self-conscious that I was stretching out the back of the phrase and then I was almost rushing the one. And I was like, is that stupid? Like, are they going to replace this the second I leave? But it felt so good. I kind of just respected it and left it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it sounds like the top is rushed, but I remember that moment.
Well, it was just you doing the Dilla thing. You know, I mean,
I guess so. Yeah.
before anybody was hip to that.
But no,
Right? I
because
mean,
it's not like Dilla thing is like you find some magical spot on the like some previously unclaimed place on the grid, and you're like, yo, that's mine now. This was like some weird like push pull, which is so subtle nobody will notice it.
Oh man, I mean,
but you
yeah.
kind of noticed it, so I had to say something. I was like, yeah.
No, it's very hip to me. And it is that thing, like we were, Scott and I interviewed Rob Malarkey and Richard Spavin about like all the beat music and the Dilla stuff that they do. And they talked about this thing of like strong beat adherence to grid.
I gotta check that out.
So like when there's like downbeats, that's the stuff that is like landing in grid spots, but it's the stuff in between. It's the hi-hats that drag. But kick drum is never dragging, or that's just like one incarnation of it, you know? And it's, and I had never really thought about it that way. And then they played Dilla's style along to a click, and you heard it so clearly that the kicks were dropping on, but then hats were backside. And anyway, it just reminds me of the way you played this, and not with any kind of, obviously you weren't thinking like, oh, I need to do some kind of style thing. You were playing the thing that felt good to you, and then questioning it, which I think is so cool, because, you know, no bravado, right? You're not like, oh, this is the dopest shit ever. You're going, this feels good. Is it good? I think that's the sign of like a functional human. That's great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on that same record, one of my favorite bass performances of all time is by Mike Neal, who played the bass on Something Something.
That's a great track.
And I saw an interview with him where I think he went and just did it in one take. Like, so I'm admitting that we actually spent some time on this, and that's I think great. Mike Neal just played the scariest bass thing ever, and had time to catch a train back to DC like before 11 o'clock. Yeah, but anyway.
Well, hey, let's transition into another scary bass line. Thank you for providing me that seg into the Groove Collective. I would love to talk to you about Everything Is Changing, because I had never heard this tune before, and it's actually your most popular. It's the Groove Collective's most played tune on Spotify.
Oh, wow.
And the bass line is ferocious, and I would love it if you'd play a little of that, and maybe we could talk about it. And I would love for you to talk about the Groove Collective too, because this is a band that you have led, co-led, and been a part of for a very long time, like a big part of your DNA as a professional player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we started playing together in the early 90s, and it was all out of kind of a dance club setting. Like it was definitely grown out of DJ culture. At that time they were calling it acid jazz.
Yeah, sure.
But all the Tribe Called Quest records and De La Soul, and then a lot of, you know, old jazz funk records were being played in these clubs. And then Groove Collective were the musicians that were starting to come to these clubs and play along with the DJs. That was the concept of the club.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And not that it was all worthy of being a perfect live record, but there was a lot of attention paid to making the live music not be a big like wah, wah, like from like it wasn't like DJ and then like, all right, let's let these guys.
Right.
So we did actually devote some time trying to make it so that we could match the coolness, for lack of a better word.
No, of course.
Of these classic tracks. And then there were some opportunities for us to play as a band, and that was sort of always our foundation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, over the course of all these years, I've learned, you know, both because those guys are all family to me, and also just the sheer number of hours we all played together. That's where, like any jazz that's in my playing is at least first from hearing my good friends who had spent their tens of thousands of hours playing jazz.
Yeah.
So like I caught up to that through hearing those phrases from them.
Yes.
Any Afro-Cuban ideas I have,
right.
You know, it's through my friends in that band. Like,
and was it the place where you first really got to improvise and sort of bring your thing into improvisation?
Yeah, I mean that was sort of the idea, is that is that thematic improvisation. Just coming up with something that's worth hearing more than once and having some sensitivity to what the harmony is, what would be a good place to go to from there. That's not like, what would be a satisfying place to go. So yeah, spontaneous composition. And I know you do that too.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't do it enough. I love the players that are really good at it. And I find that I'm more of a part guy, but when I get to put a toe, like, a sort of self-conscious toe into that water, it's always super rewarding. So, I mean, and I just hear it makes so much sense to hear you say that that's where a lot of these ideas come from, because, right, you are kind of how you come up. The band that you are with for a long time really does inform a lot of, who you become and who you are as a player. Will you play that track? I never wanted to end. Sure, yeah, okay. So
that was a short fade. That didn't work.
It's like there's so much influence, or at least, things that it reminds me of in the coolest ways. I mean, I hear Rocco in it. I hear Jocko in it. I hear Zender in it. I hear, like, they're all these like classic things, but there's some very Maron things about this line where you're choosing to drop those low notes inside of those high phrases. To me, I would never choose to do that ever. And I don't even know that I'd have the facility to. And so I'm curious, like, could you break that bass line down or play it a little slower? And it's just so fun to have you here, like, get to hear the track and then have you play it. It's crazy.
So just, I did borrow the feeling of that bass line from that Roy Ayers track, Running Away, which I would play in the wrong key if I did. I forget. It's like, that's the idea.
Dude, could you play it, like, slow it down by a third, like, it, or just approximately? Gosh, dude. Okay, tell me this.
I don't know if that was a third.
It was really, I mean, whatever it did, it was so pocket dead, like killer. Let me ask you this. What made you want to take those low notes inside of those high phrases, like keeping that low note thing happening instead of just doing it? Like, could you play that line without playing those low notes up in the upper register?
Fired.
Yeah.
I can.
Yes, you and that's no doubt, like, super, super sick. But the bubbly low notes that kind of like continue almost like two parts. It almost feels like two parts at once. Why did you do that?
I don't know. I have no idea. I think I just wanted to hear I guess it's hard for me not to grab a low E and like, I guess it's just that conversation. I think it's kind of nice to have a conversation going.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's
I
almost sort
never
of
did
call and
that
responsey.
before.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I probably never played very many fills. I
Mm.
probably always just played the full line, but now that I broke it down, I'm like, oh, I could actually just keep the low thing consistent and mess around with, I don't know. But
Yeah, right.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't mess
Oh,
with it.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, so it's so cool. And there's something else that I'm realizing too about your playing right now, where I'm seeing you, hearing you do it, where, we've talked about compression over the
Mm.
years, right? And like, and
And like how
you've
I
bought.
need it.
No,
Yeah.
no, like how you've bought compressors but never really gotten along or whatever, of like never incorporated it into your thing. And I feel like when I see you play, I'm like, I get it now, because so much of what you do, or at least in these two baseline examples, is predicated on this dynamic range
Mm.
inside an ostinato. It's not like, I'm not talking dynamic arc of a song, right? I'm talking like the dynamic arc inside of a bar. You
Hmm.
have this huge arc in the bar, and it makes it feel like primal or exciting in some way. It's really cool. And so yeah, I feel like, I feel like I know this now. You're like, I don't know about a compressor. I'm like, oh, you should check it out. But then I'm like, no, because the way you play has all of this variance. It's so cool.
I've watched the video on the Origins thing like twice. I think I have to buy another one. I sold the one that I bought, but yeah, yeah,
Don't ever get
yeah,
another compressor. God, I love how you play.
yeah.
It's so cool. So okay, those are two like really groove oriented
Mhm.
examples. And something else I would love for you to talk about. I know you from your solo EP that you put out, because it's just a different intention, right? When you made that music, I feel like it's not so much like the club banger.
Mhm.
It's a little bit more of composition, introspection. And I'm wondering if you could play a little of that, and we could maybe break some of that down as well. Oh, I'm okay. Now this one is, takes a different turn. And then of course I forget about how it just goes into this like murderous, like slow groove section.
I
Oh
added
my
my
God.
own slap track.
I
Everybody
mean,
needs that.
the double stop thing, right? And especially too, where you're down, is that a B flat, like the lowest range that you go to there? Or is it a C?
Yeah, it's
B flat.
fifths from E flat
Yeah.
fifth, B flat and a fifth with the ringing harmonic.
Yeah. So essentially like an E flat major seven, that
Yeah,
kind of,
two B
right?
flat
Like
major
E flat
seven.
with a D on top,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the B flat major. Oh man, it's really beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
So that side of your playing, this sort of chordal compositional, when you're writing this stuff, is it coming from time with the instrument, you sitting down and thinking and playing and coming up with this stuff improvisationally on the instrument, writing on bass? Are you walking around thinking of a melody? How do these ideas come?
Sometimes it's just time on the instrument and something that's, and you and I have talked about this, where it's sort of, it's somewhere in between a technique you're exploring or a sound but it's not even a thing. It's just like what happens if that note hangs over and I just move over, like, and then, so I don't know, it became something that I liked enough so I recorded it and left it on a hard drive for a while.
Yeah.
And I just sort of kept on nipping away at it, and wrote the next section. It's not a lot of writing. It's almost like scenery. There's no, I mean, I play a solo in the middle and there's some melodic things, but yeah, I just spent time with it until I sort of felt a magnetic pull to what might be a nice place to go. And I let it be really simple. And I love those slow tempos. I think that might be 60 or I don't know. It could be low 60s.
Yeah.
I used to play in a band called Elysian Fields. Do you know those guys? You were in New York. Oren Blowdown and Jennifer Charles have this band called Elysian Fields, and all their songs are no beats per minute. They're like the slowest songs in the world. And they all have amazing time. They're these beautifully crafted songs, but you have to slow your heart rate down to nothing and I played with them a lot over the years.
Yeah.
And I just came to really love those tempos and leaving lots of space and just playing a big note and letting it be. So yeah, I kind of playing with Oren and Jennifer definitely had an impact on just me loving that tempo neighborhood.
If there's somebody out there who's watching this, who is wondering, could I make the transition from being, only a sideman, and that's no judgment or no shade or no negativity, but like someone who hears that tune and goes, gosh, I wonder if I could make some music on the bass guitar that's my own music. And they were to come to you and ask you for your advice on like the first step to doing that, what would that advice be? Stepping out of just fully sideman role into artist role. What's the first thing that you would advise?
I really do think that it's cultivating. I mean, audacity just sounds like it's ego, but just sort of putting yourself in that space. Like the electric bass is such a pretty instrument. Yes. There's so much, and you're not even speaking specifically of featuring the electric bass as the lead instrument. You just mean going from sideman to artist.
Yeah, but I mean, I like where you took it, of thinking like the audacity to think of the electric bass as a solo instrument or as like a lead instrument, a melody instrument.
Yeah.
I do mean that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how do you so you make a mental jump first? That's what you're saying?
For me, I've always just spent a lot of time playing the bass, even when I'm supposed to be doing other things. I'm just playing the bass.
Yeah.
And I chase these ideas, these little sounds that are appealing to me. I just chase them and see where they're going. And my exercise is to try to stay in that creative space as long as possible before you start to shut it down. And some voice says like, well, who's going to want to hear this? Or who's like, I try to see how long I can keep myself in that space where I'm just hearing a sound and seeing where it pulls me, like what's next.
So time with it.
I think even, I don't want to say anything as lofty as saying spiritual practice, but even as just inner work, just the exercise of creating a space without that judge that just shuts everything down before it gets a chance to exist.
Yes. And how are you capturing these ideas? Like when you have them, is it a voice memos app on the phone? Is it always in a DAW? Do sometimes they rattle around in your mind for a while before you get them down, or like what's that look like? If someone just needs the that sort of like little step into how do you capture this?
Sometimes it's just on a voice memo. And a lot of times I'm in Logic. I'm just here working on stuff in this very chair. Because improvising and then playing layers over something.
So you're setting aside the time and the space to do it in your creative environment. Like you're getting into the spot, sitting down and prioritizing time to be creative.
And it's not even prioritizing sounds really, that's even way more heroic than it is. I think the big moving piece was just removing a few obstacles.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just, if my equipment is set up, I'm more likely to sit down and do something. If I've got to move 10 things before I'm working, it's embarrassing to admit that those things are obstacles, but I have to, during a not creative time, I make sure I remove the obstacles so that during a creative time, I've got open road.
It is not, I mean, I don't think that should be embarrassing at all. I remember talking to a friend, wonderful producer named Andy Thompson. I was talking to him about preamps. What preamp should I get? And he said, get as many of the same thing as you need. How many channels do you need? 2, 4, 8, 10? Just get all the same. And then set everything up on one switch. He's like, that's the most important preamp. Like, that's the best preamp you can get, is setting everything up so where you flip a switch and everything is on so you can actually start to work.
Yeah.
Instead of getting lost in the quagmire. That's something that I really struggle with, is the quagmire of clearing off the desk, or, trouble, or like A-Bing gear. God, it's just, it is an impediment, I think, to, I don't know if that's the word. It's a hindrance, an obstacle to the creative process for me. So yeah, man, I hear that for sure.
Yeah.
Could we check out because you had mentioned this other Groove Collective tune that has this awesome solo in the midst, Fly, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Because I would love to talk about your soloing as well. And while you're pulling that up, I should say too, that Jonathan has a couple of courses on SBL that are about bassline creation and creativity, and they are incredible. And if you're a member, hopefully you've seen them. If not, absolutely go check them out. And if you're not a member, it is worth grabbing the free 14-day trial for a lot of things, but specifically Jonathan's courses are incredible. And I checked out the first one that you did, made me want to be bass so bad, because I just wanted to be like you. And you, I don't know if you talk specifically about soloing in that, but you do talk about improvisation and melody and part creation.
Whoops.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna underscore it.
I thought the credits were going to roll.
Yeah. And Scott, then after I discovered you via SBL, Scott was like, oh dude, Maron is, and he loves, there's a solo that you took on, I think it's on, he had it on YouTube. I think it's, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
And he would just hold his phone up to the mic on a podcast. I feel like he did it several times. What tune is that? So that people can check it out. That's a tune of
Donnie McCaslin's. It's on my Instagram. I know it's not on a record. It's not even on YouTube. It's on my Instagram. Really? Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, I have to send Scott donuts too. All right. Everybody's getting baked.
Well, you have baked. You know what I mean? Baked goods. Baked goods.
Let me see if I can find it. I'm the worst DJ in the world. I'm not going to play the full.
thinking as a bass player, thinking about how to get into this kind of playing, getting into soloing, what's the process for developing this kind of solo voice? I mean, I know that's a huge question, but what's a way in? What's a way in for mere mortals like me? How can I get it? I'm serious.
Cut it out.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
How do I even take the first step at playing a solo like that?
I mean, well, first of all, it's not this particular solo wasn't completely from outer space because I had just seen the Gap Band play live, and the bass player Robert Wilson was playing a P bass and was digging in, and it was kind of like it's that sound where there's no fuzz box, but it's
yeah.
Yes,
right.
So that was the moment where on my Yamaha BB, I was just like, P pickup, bridge pickup, dead to me, like knob done. Like that was it. I was like, you're fired, you're finished. So that was the end of my bridge pickup. Was Robert Wilson from the Gap Band, and that solo was, and not that I took specific phrases from him, but just that, I don't know, that kind of bluesiness or that, like I didn't have access to that kind of language, and so that was all pretty new. And it was pretty bold, and I needed help to get also the reverb on that, which obviously I even have reverb on my bass right now. That was my friend Hiro Sanada, who engineered and engineered that record and has engineered and mixed several Groove Collective records since then. He was the one who's just had the idea that it would be beautiful just to hear the bass in a space and not just be frets, strings, like
but like an environment.
Yeah. So that was actually Hero, and I've definitely, obviously not. I've kept that.
Yes.
I don't know that solo in particular, or just solos. I think I've never had the instinct or the facility to leave the gate like running. I just watched a Thundercat solo that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I happen to love his playing, but I'm also aware that I would never think to do that even if I could play that way.
Sure. Yes. I know what you mean.
But my ears love it. Like I love hearing it. And so that solo, there's a lot of the solo that we just listened to of mine. There's just a lot of breath, and I say something and then I wait. And then, there's.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I do think that there's something, we were talking about sort of squinting at something and seeing the general shape. I think there is something about appreciating the impact of just the contrast between light and dark, or sound and silence. There's so much there. Like I know nothing about art, but I let myself go into a museum and just enjoy the way things look to me. And it's great that we know so much about music and what the scales are and what the modes are. But at some point you just sort of want to play with these big shapes and create a dramatic moment or create a mood. And then you can dial in like what the tools are they use to get that. So I think there's something there where just same thing, just giving yourself license to make these sounds and see what has impact. I mean, how many musicians do you know that haven't studied as much music as you have, but they'll pick up an instrument and they're the one who comes up with the magic part on the record, and you're like, hello, like I've been practicing the bass like a million hours, and like somebody's just like, oh, this is a cool part, like, and that's the shit. That's everybody. That blows everybody's mind. You're like, great.
With the thumb, dude. Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Oh man. Right. And it really smacks at and especially like if it's the guitar player, or right. Somebody, they like kind of gets at our bass player ego. I love just the simple idea. Anybody watching this, please don't miss this. The simple idea, you play something and then you don't play something. And then you play something again. I think that's such a valuable, and it feels like, well, obviously, right. But boy, when I solo, which isn't very often, but when I get an opportunity to, I used to puff up and be like, I don't really like bass solos, but that wasn't true. It was that I was self-conscious about taking them. And so instead of saying, I'm actually, not very good at it. So I feel vulnerable and self-conscious. And so I'm puffing my chest up to overcompensate. Instead of saying that, I would just be like, bass solos suck. But boy, this very simple idea of play a phrase and then wait, maybe even a long time for something else to come, I think I talked to Oteil Burbridge one time where he said, if he gets really nervous before a solo, he'll play one note and just let it sustain and close his eyes and let one note just sustain and die. And then he said, always, if I do that and I'm not trying to rush into something, he said, another idea will come to me. And I thought, man, that's so cool. That idea of space, right? Like stating something.
I mean, that's confidence.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of confidence there. And I think like just all the, musicianship stuff that we talk about, just the confidence to play a phrase and let the other instruments fill the gap. I mean, of course, when we're playing by ourselves, we fill in with ghost notes and we're sort of mimicking what the drums would do or what another guitar would do.
Yes.
But when you're actually playing music in a group, it's not silence. There's sounds and space and other parts playing. So it's really the confidence just to let everything into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Not feel like you have to fill every moment.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be empty or something.
Yeah.
Right. And even like get into the vibe of emptiness.
Yeah.
Because then it makes the next thing you say, more interesting. Moving forward, this community who's checking this out, a lot of people are going to be watching this. How can they support the next thing that you're excited about?
I mean, I'm going to be releasing new music. So my website is jonathanmaron.com, but Instagram is a more current, more often updated way of staying in touch with me, which is Jonathan Maron Music. Very creative.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where all the updates will be announced. I'll always be keeping people up to date on what gigs I'm going to be doing and what music I'm releasing.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Insta and the website.
I think so. Yeah.
Good. That's great.
Yeah.
That's easy.
That's it. And I have to just quickly say, before I did the last seminar that I did an SBL deep dive and watched a lot of stuff because I just wanted to see what was out there.
Yeah.
And I was just shocked by how much there is on SBL, like how many valuable seminars and courses. So for anybody watching this, like I really can't say enough about what a valuable resource this is.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's massive, right? All the seminars, right? All the mentor stuff that you're a part of on Mondays, that stuff all goes into archive. It's crazy. It's crazy how much stuff there is.
Yeah.
And we're really happy and lucky that you're a part of it. So thank you. This was amazing. And I just want, I feel like, stop the recording and then I just want to carry on asking you questions. Yeah. But, oh man, Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us at Bass Space 2023.
Man, I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, man, me too. Yeah. We did it.